Hello there everyone and welcome back to Feel Good with ME. I'm your host Idan and I'm so excited today to have Dr. Eliana Lacerda with us. She's part of the CureME from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And one of the reasons I brought her, but there's several reasons why I brought her, but for me personally, the main one is that we remember we are not alone. There's people dedicating their life work to understand what we're going through and how they can help us and what can help us, and putting things to the test, to rigorous tests. So for me, that thought that there's someone out there, there's a few of them out there trying to understand us and help us, means a lot. I will pass now the microphone to the virtual microphone to Dr. Lacerda. If you can introduce yourself a little bit more, the work you do, the research. I know you are you have like a biobank. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, and then we take it from there as we go along.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. It's my pleasure to be here. And I think that what you're doing is very good for reminding people with MECFS that they are not alone, as you said. And it's very important to be connected with people that share an understanding what this disease is about. And as I told you before, I started doing this research on MECFS in 2007, and it was mainly because I have seen the devastating aspects of this disease with one of my most loved friends. So my background is medicine. I studied medicine in Brazil. I came to the UK to do my PhD in environmental health. And after my PhD, I just started doing some work with MECFS with Dr. Luis Naco. And we started doing an epidemiological work with, it was basically to try to measure the number of people who had the disease and what we call the incidence of the disease, which is how many patients are getting MECFS in the UK. So we studied 3 regions in the UK, and it's important to number these to understand the impact of the disease. So from there, we also proposed the Biobank by our understanding that there must be something that it was wrong inside the bodies. So what the Biobank is a collection of blood samples that we can have linked to the symptoms and to some specific examination of patients with MECFS who were our donors. And we have also in the Biobank 2 groups that one have a specific disease, which was multiple sclerosis, and the other one were individuals that has the same kind of background in terms of age and place of where they live as a healthy control, meaning people who have more or less the same age and live in the same area of one person with MECFS. And these were for comparison studies. So we looked at these patients with MECFS and MS. We performed some clinical examinations in all the groups, including the healthy controls. So everything that we did for the 3 groups. We started asking them to fill in some questionnaires, and these questionnaires have some information about their lives, their symptoms, how the disease started, and then we assess diagnosis. And we collect blood samples after a clinical examination. And this clinical examination could be done by myself or by our research nurse. We have collected all these data linked anonymously to these blood samples. And we have been doing studies to understand the mechanisms of disease inside the bodies using the blood samples. Basically, we have been doing this with a team of the laboratory scientists at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, but we have also shared the samples and data anonymously to other research groups around the world. So we have sent blood samples and data to groups in Israel, in Brazil, Spain, Germany, many universities in the US. So I think that the idea of the Biobank is to maximize the use of these samples for research groups that are trying to understand this disease.
That's very interesting and amazing that there's people like you and you that's studying it and trying to scientifically understand what's going on with us on a biological level, on a genetic level, on all the different markers that you touched, clinical as well. This is great to hear. It's very encouraging. I'm sure many people with ME would say, why is it taking so long? But I guess it is what it is. I know funding into ME wasn't always easy. It's really changed since long COVID, and more people are seeing the effect that debilitating fatigue and weakness can have on one life. It's taken more seriously, but it's trying your best to understand what's going on and compare the data with others. We covered a bit of your research and what you guys do, the Biobank, CureME. As you're both a medical doctor and a PhD doctor, if you can tell us a little bit, how is the fatigue that we experience is different to people that say, but don't you think I also have fatigue from time to time? Or don't you think I wake up sometimes weak and tired? If you can help us to address this a little bit, because you're very qualified to answer something like that, because you both interview and see people with ME, but also you study to see what's the underlying cause and how we may be different to someone without this condition.
Yes, I think that it comes to what we call the clinical diagnosis of MECFS and why this fatigue is different. Basically, there are a number of diseases that cause with fatigue. Viral infections, for example, you have fatigue with most of viral infection. But usually when you have a viral infection, you have a fatigue, which is a kind of response to the body to fight off the infection. And after a period of time, you recover and you are fine. What seems to be happening with people with MECFS is that this chronic fatigue, it's one of the symptoms. And it's not all chronic fatigue is MECFS. So what the specialists that are studying ME along these years, we came about with what we call the clinical diagnostic criteria, and there are a few of them around. But what we are mainly using nowadays in our study group is the Canadian consensus criteria and the Institute of Medicine or NAM criteria. We used to have the CDC 94 or FEELGOOD criteria. And what this criteria is there are some diseases that you don't have a specific lab test or a biomarker, as we say, to diagnose. So some of the diseases you can diagnose even with symptoms and signs, and some specific signs. For example, if you have a dermatitis, you can see the signs in your skin. So this is very clear, and it's a straightforward diagnosis. In MECFS, it's not like that. So we used to say that it's now with this criteria, you have to have some specific symptoms. And one of the hallmarks of the MECFS is the positional malaise. This is in all the criteria, this symptom is very present and it's very characteristic of MECFS. So in order to do a diagnosis of MECFS, we have to have a clinical examination for assessing the symptoms and also some lab tests. And you can say, why are we performing lab tests? Because there is no biomarker. It's to exclude other diseases that can occur with similar symptoms. For example, if you have fibromyalgia nowadays, you have a very specific clinical diagnostic criteria. If you have migraine, you have a specific clinical diagnostic criteria. There are no biomarkers for that. So it's not unusual to have a diagnosis without a biomarker. Although in the MECFS, we are trying to find a biomarker, and this is what all these scientists and medical doctors are trying to achieve, and the Biobank can speed up this process. But at the moment, we are doing the diagnosis based on the clinical, very specific clinical diagnostic criteria. I don't know if I addressed.
No, yes, yeah, you have. You basically saying that compared to someone that say they feel from time to time tired and weak, which could be the case, and also as sufferers who might have experienced fatigue before we were going through the severe symptoms or symptoms of being diagnosed, or before being diagnosed with chronic fatigue. We know exactly what they're talking about. But someone with chronic fatigue, it's as if, so I'll take it a little bit to the side, I'll take it maybe more to evolution biology. So when you have a viral infection, your body preserves its energies by resting and making you weak and tired. So you rest, so your body can use the energy to fight the infection. And that's why in flu, you often just stay in bed. That's your body mechanism to protect itself and to channel the energy to fight the virus or whatever it's dealing with, rather than allowing you to go out and do your daily activities. So we're saying that with chronic fatigue is as if we are in a constant state of the body shutting its energies off, so it can fight something. Whether the virus is still there or not, maybe it's still unknown, but nonetheless the mechanism that seems to be active in people with going through the flu or some other condition for a short period of time is still there. Would you say that's more or less what's going on? Can you put it in a more proper way? Because I'm just bringing a little bit of theories from here and there. If you can organize it for us, that would be great.
Yes, I think that you explained quite well, actually, to be understandable for people who don't have a medical background. But what seems to be happening with this disease is that you have a trigger that usually it's related with most of these studies with viral infections, but can be other triggers. We can say, for example, exposure to specific chemicals, so pesticides. We have patients who link the trigger as an event that was very traumatic in their lives. And I'm not talking about depression. Depression is a psychiatric condition that can cause with fatigue, chronic fatigue, but it's very specific and there are ways to treat them. In MECFS, people can have secondary depression or anxiety, but it's not a diagnosis of depression or anxiety per se. So what seems to be happening, as I said, is that after the triggering event, it seems that the body is not recovering. We have what we call homostasis, which is a way that the body can recover after a disease. And there are specific mechanisms into our bodies that can reorganize or reset all the mechanisms inside the body to put us in a healthy condition again. In people with MECFS, it seems that although the body is trying to do that, there are some barriers that they cannot reset. So it's very important for people with MECFS not to push themselves, because you can, if you do this, and usually people who are newly diagnosed, what they try to do is exactly that. They try to push themselves and then they crash. And I don't need to explain more about the crash because you know what I'm talking about. I think that all people with MECFS knows. And this is related to what we call post-exertional malaise. So it's very important to listen to your body and try to pace yourself within what we call the envelope energy. So it's a kind of pack of energy that you could try to work up to that limit, but not go after that, because if you pass this point, you'll be crashing and then it can go downhill. So at the moment, because we don't have specific treatment in terms of medical treatment, what we are trying to do is to make the body, first of all, for people with MECFS to understand these mechanisms and to listen to their bodies and try to work slowly to this level of energy. And in the meantime, I think that what we as medical professionals and scientists are trying to understand why this mechanism is disrupted and how we can understand what is going on and try to kind of fix it. But this is a long process and has been a long process. And it's important for people to understand that people with MECFS, and not only that, but family members, partners, friends, to understand that it's not all in your head. It's what is happening in your body that you have to work within this level of energy. And it's so important to have the support of your loved ones. As much difficult as is, I think that it's of paramount importance of people with MECFS to be supported and to work within this energy level.
You said some amazing things in here, and I wish I'm a little bit brain fogged today. I'm always brain fogged since I probably have my condition. Today a little bit more than I want to be. It's not terrible, but I wish I could break it down 100%. But nonetheless, I'll try not to let it stop me, and I'll try to go into it. So I think to understand homostasis, it's an important point here, and I'll explain it again in my simple way of speaking. is that basically, if I get it right, there is like the body has a mechanism to keep itself balanced. So the body like a certain heart rate to be kept at, a certain body temperature to be kept, a certain pulse, etc. That everything is more or less within a certain range of 0 is balanced, +1 is okay, -1 is okay. But if you go for a run, suddenly your pulse goes very high, and once you stop the running, your body would want to bring back to a homostasis balance situation where your pulse is back to the normal range, your body temperature cools down a bit again. It would use maybe sweat to cool you down, it would use some fatigue or aches to slow you down, so it's not overstretched. It's like a bit of a car engine. If you run it in gear number 1, you're going too fast, it will scream, you will hear the engine running, and when you take your a foot off the throttle, you would feel the engine is raving back to normal range, and is ready to go into second gear to be more gentle, etc. And basically, when we are ill, of course, the body is out of this balance, out of this homeostatic balance, and it has different mechanism to bring itself back over time. I often refer to flu because for me, it resembles the condition as if I'm living through a constant flu. The weakness, the fatigue, the aches, the inflamed notes everywhere, the sore throat. I can't express it well enough. Like I used to live maybe for 10, 11 years with a sore throat that would not go away, as if I had the flu or something, and my knots all behind my ear, down the jawline, sometimes even towards my armpit. It was so painful and rock hard. So I think is with the homostatic, it's just a mechanism that we need to understand. The body has this mechanism to keep itself in balance. And with chronic fatigue syndrome, me, if I understand correctly, is that system is not working properly. We don't have the biomarkers maybe to prove that it's not working properly as yet, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because as you said, sometimes by eliminating other condition, that's the proof itself that it's not working, the symptoms still occur. Something like that. I'm getting a bit lost, so you can help me
I think that you are doing a great job. I think that this is exactly a kind of translation of what I'm saying. I'm sorry for using some technical terms, but it is exactly like that. I mean, our bodies, although to understand the mechanisms, in medical terms, we used to look at different systems like the defense system of our bodies, which is we call the immune system. We have the cardiovascular system. We have the hormonal. So all these systems are working, and we kind of classify them in systems, but it's a beautiful mechanism that it's amazing, our bodies, how they interact to respond to challenges. And this is what our bodies are doing, is responding to challenges and trying to make us to work well again. So when we have kind of invading organisms, so if you have bacterial disease or viral disease, so our system, immune system, can try to fight off this. And for doing this, they need the cardiovascular system to go on, and all the respiratory system, we use all these systems that work in a very organized way, and it seems that it's almost, when you have MECFS, they are fighting so hard to come back to this normal way of functioning, which is the homeostasis. And it seems that it's almost that some parts of these systems are exhausting themselves and cannot work properly. So this is why we try to understand why this self-healing mechanism is not working, why this coming back to normality in the body as expected is not working. And this is what we are trying to understand with our research. And I think that some responses are coming to light, but it's still not the full picture. So, but I think that even for people with MECFS, I can understand the frustration of long years without good responses. But I think that in some conditions, it's more complicated than the others. And we are still hopeful to understand this better and try to come back to responses. One of the things that you mentioned, it's about funding for research. And I think that this is one of the issues that we are trying to address as well, because, yeah, I think that funding is an issue that we know that with much funding much more funding could speed up this process. But I think that there are quite a number of colleagues and scientists that are still going on and are dedicated to this for decades now.
This is so encouraging. And for any of you with ME, chronic fatigue, potentially fibromyalgia or other conditions which are not 100% understood, I think just what Dr. Lacerda is telling us is that don't lose hope. There are people, we are not alone, there are people who are absolutely dedicating their life to try to understand and help us. They're researching it day in, day out. And also, if you feel not understood by your GP, maybe you can look up. I know it's difficult to look up when you have brain fogs and you fatigue, but if you can find someone, one person that listens to you and understands you, try to print to your GP what MECure research group does. Take this podcast or something. I'm going to try to get Dr. Lacerda to give us some resources so we can copy and paste it from here for them to see, because I know some doctors, I do believe the vast majority of doctors are out there to help us and they just frustrated themselves. They just don't know what's going on. I remember the various GPs I've seen. I have to say they were mostly kind and amazing. They were just felt really sad and sorry for me that they didn't know what was going on. They were willing to offer me any examination, tablet, anything I could think of or they could think of just to help me get through this. They had no idea that it's chronic fatigue syndrome until about 2010 maybe, or 11, something like that. I managed to Google and told them, look, it must be chronic fatigue syndrome. Even when I thought it was already this. As you know, when you have the condition, you don't have the energy to chase appointment, to attend appointment, so you always fall behind, especially if you don't have support around you. But I think if you can find information to help them understand what is it you have, then maybe that would help. Or if you feel your GP doesn't understand you, you don't have a good rapport with them, perhaps you need to change them. So it can feel lonely. I definitely felt lonely for a long time. Try to find people who understand you. Try to connect with the ME Association, with ME Cure, with all of these bodies out there that we now luckily have to connect with, so we don't fall into the trap of loneliness and depression, because what is it we're going through. And seek counseling if possible through your GP as well. If you feel nobody understands you, it's not the cure probably, but the loneliness and the frustration that there's no biomarkers, even though we just discussed that yes, part of the diagnosis is ruling out other conditions. It can feel very frustrating that we can't put the finger on something. It's just a human nature. We want to say, yes, it's this blood elevation or something, or urine sample, something comes up. We would love that. I'm sure most of us would, just to have something to hang on to and say, it's real, I told you so. And then we believe people will listen to us more. And I think people are slowly starting to listen more. So I think it's only getting better. But you can let me know if you feel differently through the various channels, because I do want to hear what you're feeling, and I will liaise that to Dr. Lacerda so she can learn more, although she's with her hand on the pulse all the time in that field. So that one thing. Don't feel you're alone. There's others like us, and there's people that are trying to understand. So try to hold that thought as a positive thing, that's people dedicated. And I wanted to ask you, Dr. Lacerda, is there anything in particular you can recommend to us to tell a GP if we feel we have this condition and the GP is not familiar so much with the condition, they're not sure if we have it, they don't really want to prescribe us to the chronic fatigue syndrome local unit? Is there anything you think we can tell them that will help us to be taken more seriously, or just something that we can say to? Is there a list or something you can send me so I can link it in the description, or just something you can tell us what to say a little bit so people can take us?
Yeah, first of all, I think that I would like to start addressing this question by acknowledging the wonderful work from the ME charities. So you mentioned the ME Association. We have the ME Research UK here that they are still part of our steering committee, and they have been helping us since the beginning of our work in the CureME. So they are very good. There are many associations, patients associations as well. Support groups is very important. And also since 2016, we have a small grant for establishing a network of scientists and ME kind of doctors in Europe. So we started with 8 countries, and we end up in 2020 with 22 countries participating in this network. So one of the things that we did were, it's being with the Italian group, that we managed to do some videos, and some of them are specific for GPs, to educate GPs on MECFS. We have also video addressing patients with ME, family members, and these videos are being edited at this moment, so we can, I guess that our Italian colleagues are intending to finish soon. It was supposed to be finished by December, but I think that they have some delay. And these videos were also supported by the Italian ME CFS charity. So I'm not sure which one, but I know that there are 2 or 3 in Italy. And I can send you some of the documents that we the link of the documents that we work with. And yeah, one of the things that you mentioned, and I fully support, is don't think that you are alone, and try to engage with other people, support groups. And it's very important that family members are being also supportive.
Absolutely, it's so important that the immediate environment, and I think in my case personally, I don't know if I guess I was a proud guy. You know, I ran at 1.50 kilometers when I was 18. I cycled 100 miles when I was 17. I was a very fit, strong guy, and I get testosterone and all of that when you got young and competitive. And by the age of early 20s, to be reduced to such little energy and so weak, the weakness I can't describe at the peak. I wouldn't be able to move the duvet on my own, the bed covers. I wouldn't be able to do it. I would be stuck in bed like my arms are to the side, and there would be nothing I could do to get up, and as I said, not even to get up, that's very ambitious, but to move the blankets away from me. And it hurt my pride as a young person, but I think I wish I knew now that I shouldn't have been ashamed of it. I should be more reaching out. It's not a shame. We haven't chosen to go through this. We are doing everything we can to get over it. So it's not a shame to ask for help. It's okay. And often I discovered throughout my life, because I'm also dyslexic, if people who are able to do something fast, usually they will do it happily. They will, can I make you a cup of tea? Please just ask me. You need it. Of course I'll do it for you. Can I boil you some rice? Of course I can. It will make you feel good. It will give you some energy. Of course I will. So yes, we need to, if possible, to ask for help where possible, to let to let others know what we're going through, and to ask them to bear with us, to forgive us. We haven't asked to have it happen to us, so a bit of understanding is always welcomed. And I think most people, when you speak from a place that of no choice, I haven't chosen it, I think they understand. So that's on that point. I wanted to, and it's great to hear that there's videos now explaining to doctors how to diagnose it and what we're going through. It's fantastic. So thank you very much. And I wanted now to ask you a little bit about inflamed knots, sore throat, brain fog, and multiple chemical sensitivity. I know I'm throwing at you quite a lot of questions all at once here, but whatever you can attempt to talk to us, because I personally, over the years with the condition, have developed extreme sensitivity to chemicals, from washing powders. If somebody sprays a perfume next to me, or after they've been to the toilet, I used to go to a bathroom and someone sprayed those air fresheners, and my whole face and nose, it's like I've got an allergic reaction, a hay fever, where I'm sneezing, I'm coughing, my nose is runny, my throat is hurting even more. So there's that. The other thing, my knots around the jawline they were really hurting me, and they felt blocked. I don't know if they get blocked, I'm not too sure what it is. Maybe it's the lymphatic system. And then the sore throat, why was it hurting me so much like that? And the brain fog. I used to be such an articulate person. I used to be so good with my words. I could listen to a few languages by my friends in school. One would speak Russian, one Romanian, one Yiddish, one Arabic, one Portuguese, and I would be able to take all of these languages, not even knowing what I'm saying, but just to make a funny song. And people loved it, and I loved it. I had such a good memory for that. To being reduced to barely being able to say my name without a stutter at the peak, forgetting everyone I know names, forgetting what I need to do, what things are done, feeling confused all the time, and like there's no one up there, like there's no one there's no one in me, like it's like just blank. So maybe you can tell us a little bit why we experience these things, and are they related to ME, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what you described here, it's mainly the initial symptoms that people have with MECFS, or when they crash, they have all the symptoms again. So it's, first of all, I think that it's important to understand, as you said, that it's not something that it's in your mind. We can see these signs. As medical doctors, we can see them. It's usually people who have a previous MECFS status of being high achievers, exports, practicing exports, and because of that, I think that in the late 80s in the US, they tried to call this the yuppie flu, because it were people who were very high achievers, and suddenly they have a kind of flu and they crash down and they can never manage to get back to their previous working ethos or working capacities. And then they were just discarded at having a breakdown. And now we know that it's not like that. The symptoms that you described are basically related to this pathophysiology or these mechanisms that are impaired. So you have a specific flu or a reactivation of a virus. For example, the herpes virus is, when you catch them, they are into our bodies. And if your immune system, for some reason, is going down, the virus can reactivate and the immune system can try to fight the virus. And this sore throat, all the glands, it's a kind of signal that your immune system is trying to react to what they understand is a threat. So the same with all the chemical sensitivities is seen as a threat. And it's part of the symptomology or the symptoms for MECFS. So people can react not only to chemicals, but they have various sensitivities such as sound, even touch. And we have seen these in more severely affected patients. Some of them are laying down in dark rooms with, earplugs and shielding their eyes, and even the minimum movement can lead to excruciating pain. This is the most extreme part of the spectrum of this disease. And unfortunately, there are some of these patients that can go down, and it seems that the homeostasis, which is these mechanisms of coming back to normality in the body, is not working at all. So they are living in very challenging conditions, I would say. So this is why it's so important to understand that you cannot push yourself, because you can crash, and then you are doing a disservice to what your body is trying to do. So as I said, it's all part of all of these symptoms that you described is part of the disease. And it's important to understand them and get a step down and try to work in your envelope energy. Don't push yourself. This is so important at this moment that we don't have a specific response. We have to work what we had. And the main thing at the moment is to avoid crashing.
It's so amazing. It's it's uplifting to know someone like you understand us and looking into this and describing a little bit what we're going through. I think if you are living with a partner, or if you are younger with a parent, or not younger, just you're living with your parents or with a carer or friends, let them hear those things, because often their response will be, oh no, you're just weak, you need to build up your strength. It's a very common English saying, you got to build up your strength. And it's well intended, I have no doubt. But in our case, as opposite it is to the regular research that exercise does good to your insulin level, to your brain function, to your joint, in our particular cases, it is absolutely harmful, because as many of you know, you try to walk around the block, or you try to push yourself a tiny bit more, and you end up crashing. In my case, it's 2 or 3 weeks of crashing on being in a relapse, and the consequences of it are horrible. I can't cook for myself. I struggle getting out of bed. I can't change my bed sheets for 2 or 3 weeks. So we have to really remind ourselves, and it's difficult to remember, because sometimes every few months or every few weeks we can wake up feeling, I can do something good today. I woke up a bit energized, and we forget spoon theory. We only have a limited amount of spoon. We may feel we have a bit extra spoons, but those energy units are soon going to hit the limit, and we're going to borrow spoons. And borrowing spoons of energy, units of energy, means we may have to recover them by going backwards a little bit. So just try to remind yourself and those around you that it's an envelope theory, as Dr. Lacerda now taught me. It's a frame, basically. Envelope from it's engulfed. It's just a certain amount of energy frame that we have. Work within it. Don't push yourself. Don't do things strenuous. If you feel it's doing you not good, and you can use your past. If you know in the past, oh, I pushed myself a bit, it wasn't good, then you know you belong to the envelope, people. We have to stick to the energy that we have whilst the situation is like that. It may improve naturally over time, and we can expand our envelope. It may contract. We have to learn to work within the situation. We're not in a battle, we're not fighting anyone, we are just learning to accept ourselves and to work with what we have, to find forgiveness to ourselves if we feel we're not progressing, because often it happens in the years when people supposedly, they will tell us, in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, you want to have the best job, the best study, education, get married, have children, have a family, all of these things which society often talk about, and that's when the condition happens. So we have to find forgiveness to ourselves, ask forgiveness from others, that we don't meet their expectations. We don't have to meet anyone's expectation, but when we ask them for forgiveness openly, soften them, and he reminds them they haven't brought it upon themselves. Take it easy with them, be kinder to them, gentler, softer, be more supportive. So I think we have to remember those things. There is so much I can talk to Dr. Lacerda about our condition, and I think the best way to move forward is if you write to me or leave a comment either on the Instagram or through other channels, I will leave details below, then I can bring more questions to Dr. Lacerda for another interview, because I think she is so supportive and amazing, and we are so grateful to you and your work. So so let's do that. So let's think of other questions which I haven't covered here that we can ask her in the future. I can then submit them to her, and she can hopefully join us at a future interview in a few weeks or few months, and we can talk about more things. But personally, I want to thank you, Dr. Lacerda. It's been so hopeful for me to speak to you and to hear that there is work being done. We are not alone. It's being looked at. It's uplifting, and you are wonderful. So thank you so much for being with us. Any last thing you would like to share with us? I know we took already quite a bit of your time, but is there anything you'd like us to tell us, or anything?
Well, firstly, I would like to say that it's a privilege to be talking to you. I think that it's very important, and what we are doing is trying to connect with people and to understand this disease, that it's so damaging to the lives of people who had, and also their partners, their family members, their friends. So it's very important to understand that, and this is why I think that I'm privileged to be working in this area and to be able to talk to you. I think that this is very good. Also, I'd like to acknowledge again the amazing work of the ME charities, and to say that the envelope theory was developed by Dr. Lenny Jason in the US, and it's very interesting to say that it's so important for people to understand that, because they have been working this envelope theory, and they are developing mechanisms that people can easily understand and try not to push themselves. This is so important. And slowly, they can be improving and hopefully avoiding crashes and avoiding to be in a severe way. It's important to understand also that people who are severely affected, it's not because of their own trying to push themselves. It's estimated that 25% of people who had MECFS have a severe form of the disease. We cannot understand why is that yet, but it's important to try to understand that you should avoid crashing. You should avoid pushing yourself for the limits, and you have to have the support of the family members, the loved ones, and including friends. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you so much for being with us and for all your work. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you in the future. I would leave links and details of things we mentioned, the charities, works of others, below, so we can read more about it and keep in touch. Thank you once again. It was a pleasure talking to you.